This is Canada's third advertising week, and every year we try and build on the lessons learned of the prior year. So we're hoping that this is going to be the best one yet. Advertising Week is all about recognizing that our industry is one of the key pillars of the Canadian economy. The advertising and communications industry drives business growth. It provides significant employment. It funds content. It accelerates change and innovation. It supports innumerable charities and social causes. And it generally improves the quality of life for Canadians. That's me, by the way. And these are some of the scenes of the last few advertising weeks. You may see yourself there. On a good day, we can go home from work knowing that beyond supporting our families, we're building the economy, we're at the cutting edge of creativity and innovation, and we're also supporting some highly worthwhile causes. Advertising Week would never come together were it not for many of you folks in the room. It takes a Herculean effort, and we thank all of you who have participated in putting this week on. There are some specific folks that I would like to give thanks to. Claude Carrier, I suspect most of you know Claude. Claude has been our chair for the last 3 years. He has now finally flanked himself with a vice chair, so he's got an exit strategy. But Advertising Week would never be what it is had it not been for the huge efforts of Claude Carrier. He's got passion, he's got vision, and we are very, very grateful for his leadership. He is also now head of the board of the ICA. So let's give a round of applause to Claude and thank him. Andrew Bruce is the vice chair this year, and Andrew will be taking over as the chair for 2012. And we thank him. Publicis has had a huge role in redoing our website for us this year, and hopefully you've found those improvements to be as significant as we have. The ICA Board of Directors, they believe in Advertising Week, and they have been highly supportive. This is a working board. These folks each had a committee, and we thank them for their efforts on behalf of their industry. And we also have our Board of Governors. They will be meeting after this meeting. They all serve on industry committees, also highly supportive, and we thank them. The ICA staff, and of course, our members, ICA members, we are very, very grateful for you folks being part of this industry association, and we thank you for your support. ICA staff, small but mighty. Every single one on the staff has had something to do with pushing Advertising Week forward, but of course, Stacey Farber, who is hiding at the back, much of the load falls on her shoulders, and we really need to give Stacey a major round of applause. Stacey has been helped this year by Lori Finkelstein, who's been with us the last few months. Lori's at the back, and Lori, are we allowed to tell people today's your birthday? Feel free to mention happy birthday to Lori if you see her. We have innumerable sponsors and partners and supporters who have helped us out putting this week together. And I applaud you who have been with us for more than 1 year. You guys are amazing because so many of you look at what has been done in the past and you want to raise the bar for yourselves. So this year, as I said, we're hoping that Advertising Week will be the best one yet, but it's partly because our sponsors and our partners have been so supportive. One of our sponsors and supporters, by the way, is MDC. And MDC has brought us Miles Nadel today, and I would like to thank Miles for coming here, especially in this kind of weather when you could have presumably been in part of the world that was more pleasant. He is the founder, the CEO, and the head of MDC Partners, and they've had tremendous success this year. But this breakfast is put on by Shaw Media. And Shaw Media represents the transformation that's going on in this industry. They have been our partner in the opening breakfast for the last 2 years as CanWest. This year they're with with us is Shaw Media, and we've got Paul Robertson, who heads up Shaw Media. He has a long and very successful career in our industry. He comes to Shaw Media from, most recently, Chorus. Previously, he was at CTV, and I'm just checking my notes, Nelvana, and Campbell's Soup, and prior to that, General Foods. So I welcome Paul to the stage, and while he's coming up, we have a brief video to show you.
Good morning. I hope you enjoyed that small commercial message from Shaw Media. And it's a pleasure to be here. It is great to see such a superb turnout given the coldness out there, but it should be absolutely a terrific morning. And I'm pleased to, on behalf of Shaw Media, to be the sponsor of this morning's breakfast and to be part of the kickoff of what is a very, very important week for the advertising industry and community. Pleased to be here. So I have the terrific and very enjoyable task of introducing Donna Friesen, and we're looking forward to see Donna and hear Miles Nadel in conversation. And just a little bit of background on Donna. You're getting pretty familiar with her as part of Global National. But when we went out to search for a new anchor for Global National, we really searched high and low all around the world and wanted to get the absolute strongest English reporter and anchor that we could find that would connect with Canadians across the country. And wouldn't you know, we'd find one from a small country in Manitoba, a rural Manitoba gal that came to Canada and back to Canada and is now connecting with Canadians around in every part of our country. Part of Donna's background is that she's been face-to-face with the Taliban. She's been face-to-face with the Queen. Now she's face-to-face with a million Canadians every day. So we're thrilled to have Donna here today. And at this point, what I'd like to do is ask Donna and Nadal to come up to the stage and be with us.
I wanted to say that I've always been proud of my Canadian heritage, but when I see what a spectacular job that everybody in this industry has done to put on what is a world-class event, it really reinforces my pride about being Canadian, but also to say this is really a world-class event and that everybody who's a participant in it, everybody who's in attendance, everybody who's volunteered, it really is quite extraordinary, and everybody really deserves a round of applause.
Thanks. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Nadal, Miles, as he's asked me to call him. I'm sure most of you know this already, but he is a remarkably successful entrepreneur, philanthropist, and highly skilled marketing and advertising guy. He's the founder and chairman and CEO of MDC Partners, which is the 9th largest, I believe, advertising and marketing services firm in the world. Is that about right?
Depends on the day, but that sounds good.
That sounds good.
Better than 10, not as good as 8.
The company has clients all over North America, Europe, and Latin America. It emphasizes strategy, creativity, and consumer insights to drive growth and increase return. Miles has acquired a number of companies over the years. I couldn't actually find an exact number online.
I don't know the number either.
Yeah,
so
quite a few. Suffice to say, he's got a hunger for acquisitions. And if you Google him, you will find a whole lot of descriptions of him. A maverick and energetic are two of the ones that came up most often. I would add gutsy to the list because he's a man who started out in 1980, so the story goes, at the age of 22, with $500 off his Visa card, bought a camera and parlayed that into a photography business. And since then has gone from strength to strength over the years, building strong businesses, receiving numerous awards and accolades from his peers. And of course, as his business responsibilities have grown, he has also grown in another direction, looked beyond the latest deal, and taken an increasing role in supporting community and charitable organizations, particularly, Miles, I understand, focusing in the areas of healthcare, education, and children's welfare. So I think one of the quotes I read online was, you have said that it's easy to make a living, but it's tough to make a difference, which is it's fascinating. So Miles Nadal is our guest this morning. Miles, I want to start by asking, one of the things I discovered about your company too is that the slogan for your company is where great talent lives. And you describe MDC as not your typical agency. What sets it apart? What makes it different?
Well, I mean, our whole belief in life is that the existing models are broken, and what we fundamentally feel is that if you empower brilliantly talented people who have the ability to understand, especially today, how consumers consume influence in a digital economy, and you empower them to come up with brilliant ideas that make brands famous, that drive financial returns, they will ultimately do great things for clients. And the byproduct of great results for clients is financial success. I think historically, especially in the evolution of the last 30 years, the world's got it backwards, that if you manage to economics, then you just figured out what the work had to be to do that. I think it's completely backwards. We think that if you empower and invest in creative, strategic, technological talent that knows how to make brands famous, that ultimately you will succeed. This is a business that's always been about talent. So this is not a new idea. If you go back to the great icons, whether it be, you know, Bill Bernbach or Jay Chiat or David Ogilvy or any of the other recent, you know, iconic firms, it was always about doing great work. It was always about great talent. What's happened, though, is that the cultures of these firms have been emasculated, and they've lost having fun. They've lost sort of the enjoyment and dedication to doing brilliant work. And they've also lost the culture and DNA to take risk. But this is an industry where you got to take risk. You got to change things up. You got to try new things. You got to challenge conventional wisdom. You've got to be the black sheep. You've got to go against the rules of engagement historically, because otherwise you'll never get consumers' attention. And as everybody in this audience knows, it's harder now than ever to get consumers' attention. So we basically said, if you invest in the most talented people, if you empower them and you create alignment, you'll ultimately succeed.
Is it difficult for companies as they get larger and as they become more established to have that cutting edge, to do things differently, to be willing to take risks? Because traditionally, the more established you get, the more kind of entrenched you are, the more there's a management structure that can become top-loaded, the harder it is to be risky, to take risks.
Well, it's an interesting thing. So there's a famous quote that I'm sure everybody remembers, the late Jay Chiat. He said, "How big do we get before we get bad?" We don't actually believe that there's necessarily a correlation. I say necessarily a correlation between size and innovation. Of course, as you get larger, it's harder to keep that entrepreneurial culture. It's harder to be as nimble and agile and hostile, as Bear Bryant used to say, as you were when you were the small startup. But I don't believe that it's necessarily the case. There's lots of big agencies that are great, and there's lots of small agencies that are bad. So I don't believe that one is necessarily associated with the other. In our case, I think it's easier for us to get more innovative. I think it's easier for us to be more entrepreneurial. I think it's easier for us to take more risks because we have more resources to allocate it over. My whole thing in life is, Ted, interesting statistic. So Ted Williams was a famous baseball player. He was the most famous baseball player in the history of the world. I don't know a lot about baseball, but I remember statistics. He batted .403 in his best year. So that means 6 out of 10 times he struck out. So for us, business is about two things. Take probabilities of outcome, so understanding the probabilities, and taking steps to increase the probability of a successful outcome. For us, we know for sure we're going to be wrong when we take risk. We just hope we're going to be very right when we're right, and we hope we're going to be sort of small wrong when we're wrong. But we will take risk and we will try things because we think that success is ultimately about being bold early and right, but bold and early doesn't make up for being wrong. So as long as we get larger, I think that we need, Larry Page, who as everybody knows, just took over as CEO of Google, he had a great expression on the weekend. He talked about the fact that we need to act like a startup again. I think of MDC as a small company, as a tiny little business, the same way I did when I borrowed $500 for my Visa card, and our first offices were at 466 Bathurst Street, Bathurst College. And I say we're just a group of small startups, and we should always think in being nimble and agile. We should always think like Andy Grove once said, only the paranoid survive. We should always think about, trying different things. And I will tell you that our most successful agencies are more entrepreneurial today. They are more risk-oriented in terms of trying new things than they've ever been in their lives. And I think part of what we've tried to instill is we've got the financial wherewithal for you to try things. And you should take risk, because ultimately that's how you have breakthrough ideas. If you just take the conventional wisdom, you will never have a breakthrough idea. You're not going to be able to do subservient chicken. You're not going to be able to do Whopper freakout. You're not going to be able to do, I'm a PC. You're not going to be able to do the Vim campaign. You've got to do things differently. And your worst case scenario is it doesn't work and you move on. You try something else.
If the slogan is where great talent lives, how do you define great talent? What attributes do you look for?
Well, I guess there's two things. So I have 6 rules of partnership. They became famous because Chuck Porter, actually Alex and Chuck Porter gave me T-shirts for our 30th anniversary. So I have sort of 6 qualitative things. Partner only with people that you want to have breakfast, lunch, or dinner with a second time. Partner only with people that you truly like, admire, and respect. Partner only with people that you want to have you're prepared to have a long weekend in a small cabin, small boat, or small ranch. Partner only with people that you trust enough to make the executive of your estate. And probably the last, I got 4 actually more, but 2 are official, 2 are unofficial. 2 official ones is partner only with people that have large craniums and big candle power. You need people that are clever and have good judgment. And the last one is officially that people that have the passion and dedication and will to sacrifice for the common mission. My last 2 unofficial ones are, 1, people that have the charity gene. If you don't want to make a difference in the world, sort of not really of interest to me, but that doesn't mean you're not talented. And the last one is people don't appreciate animals. I relate probably better to my golden retriever than I do to most people in the world, so I think if you don't like animals, it's hard for me to relate to you. But that wasn't the case before.
Miles, talk to me about social media. How do you think it's shaping us as a society? How do you think it's impacting human interaction? Is it a positive? Is it a negative?
I've been waiting for this question because I got a great quote. So there's a great quote from a guy from Google, and he said, social media is like teenage sex. Everybody talks about it, nobody knows what they're doing, but once they experience it for the first time, they think it's really easy. I think that was funny, by the way. It was really funny. I think social media, social networking is probably the most significant marketing innovation to have happened in the world over the last couple of decades. I think it has changed the world permanently in many ways. I think it's created the interactive dialogue between the consumer and the brand and the consumer. I think it has changed a couple of things. It's changed retailing in the sense that everybody, you no longer just need retail branches, eBay, Amazon, etc. I'll give you an interesting statistic that's a little self-serving, but as you get to know me, you'll find self-serving comments come natural. Domino's Pizza, is the 4th biggest e-tailer in the world. You know, there are many retailers today where, you know, between 20 and 50% of their business now is coming online. In addition to that, I think you learn as much from your brand evangelists as you do from your brand detractors. So I think marketers are learning a great deal from social media. And obviously, with 550 million, you know, users online with Facebook, it has changed how, you know, the sort of 12 to 35-year-old is communicating today, and that's only going to grow in its impact. So I think social media is probably the biggest new initiative, and it's also the one that's probably least understood by marketers, but probably growing most rapidly.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you how it has changed the way your company, MDC, does business, and you know, because a lot of small startups can do a lot of marketing on their own, essentially, right? They don't need traditional advertising and marketing companies necessarily in the same way that they did before as their only sort of source and outlet.
What you say is very true. Well, first of all, about 50% of our business today is digital, technology, social media, and analytics. So we have been at the forefront of thought leadership of investing ahead of the curve relative to any of the other networks in the world. I think we had two benefits. One, we saw that trend, and our partners have really been at the forefront of that, about understanding that being technological leaders in that regard would give us a durable competitive advantage. The second thing is we didn't have the encumbrances of traditional media. We didn't have these huge monolithic media businesses that were invested traditionally in you know, traditional kind of advertising. So we didn't have the legacy assets or liabilities, depending on how you look at it, to deal with. So we were in a position to do that. I think the world's changing so much in that regard that you can never take for granted anything that worked historically. You've always got to be reinventing. I think the thing that makes MDC unique also is we are a network of partnerships about entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurship is about two things. It's about identifying opportunity and capitalizing on it. If you look at the people that are changing our industry, they're in their 20s. I mean, Andrew Mason at Groupon he's an old guy. He's 30. You know, Mark Zuckerberg's, I don't know, 24 or 27, whatever he is. I mean, if you look at the people at Zynga, and you look at the people at Twitter, and you look at the people, you know, who started YouTube, and all of the new social media initiatives, they're all in their 20s. These are the great entrepreneurs, and the interesting thing is they're motivated to do things differently. It's not about economics for them. It's about reinventing the rules of engagement. So that's why when people say, oh my God, Mark Zuckerberg must have been crazy. He turned down $1 billion from Yahoo, and then he turned down $15 billion, you know, from Microsoft, and then he's, you know, now they're valuing at $50 billion, and he doesn't care. He thinks he's going to build the most important, most influential business ever in the history of the world, and that's why he's doing it. Same thing is true with Groupon.
You know, I wonder, though, about, I mean, this is my own question, less to do with advertising and marketing. It's kind of a bigger picture question about the way social networking affects human interaction and the way we communicate. Well, I wonder about that because I feel that you know, the relationships I value are the ones I have with one-on-one with people who I know and love. Those are, and having a sense like I've got whatever, I think I only have 26 friends on Facebook or something because I log on once every 6 months. That's not what's valuable to me personally. So I'm trying to understand the value of the nature of the relationships we form.
Well, look, I think there are many good things associated with social media, and I think there are many not so good things. In fact, very bad things. So the good things are that it allows us access to information immediately. It allows us a level of intimacy, of involvement together that one feels when you don't have the same fear about when you first meet somebody. You know, you can be probably more forward over the internet than you would be in person. You know, so there are many benefits in that regard, and you can have many friends quickly. I think the negatives are, you know, people are not reading like they used to when I grew up. You know, that we have 4 daughters. 3 of them actually grew up reading. One of them doesn't read so much, but you know, and so that's number one. Number two is I think the big fear that we as parents have is that they're exposed to things that they don't have the emotional intelligence and wherewithal to deal with. I mean, they're exposed to bad things, you know, bullying and, you know, sexual expression and all kinds of things that they don't have the tools to emotionally deal with. So that's obviously very scary. I think obviously one needs to balance, you know, what the benefits against the risks. And I also think that, you know, my fundamental belief is that there's too much exposure to social media too early. And so, you know, like with any new technology, you know, water finds its own equilibrium over a period of time. But there are some scary things that are obviously happening that are concerning everyone. And, you know, this whole issue of bullying over the internet is very scary. And the problem is that you can really hurt people very quickly, you know, by blasting out, you know, on Facebook, you know, things that are not responsible. And there's no governor and there's no real standards as there is in the traditional media, and that's you know, that's a concern.
On the other hand, Facebook, I was just reading a New York Times piece about Facebook was largely played a large role in the fall of the government in Tunisia, because so many users on Facebook were actively you know, organizing in a way that they never could have before, quite clearly, in a country like Tunisia. And within 28 days, you know, Ben Ali was gone. So it is remarkable power.
I think the other obviously concern that everybody is talking about is the issue of privacy. And, you know, what you do and how it gets stored and who it's utilized with, et cetera, is obviously another concern. And I think you'll see a lot more government involvement in that regard, so that, you know, there's an element of responsibility incumbent upon social media in terms of how one utilizes that information and all the facts about you, because the reality is everything you do is completely monitored. It's all available in a database, and so if it's not appropriately managed, it has an irresponsible social potential.
Miles, let's talk about brands. They traditionally have been the foundation of the advertising business. Are they becoming less significant in the modern age, or do you think that brands are as important as ever?
I think brands are more important than ever. I think they always have been and they always will be. I think how one creates a brand, how one reinforces brand equity, et cetera, is more challenging, because with fragmentation of media, it's more difficult. But I think what's happened in the new world is you can create a brand from nothing. I mean, look at the Old Spice campaign. I mean, it took a brand that was really defunct and all of a sudden made it very topical. Or look what happened with Axe, you know. So I think the difference, though, is that brand marketing has to cover the entire spectrum of all means of communication. That traditional media still plays a very important role, but it's just not the dominant role and the only role. So, you know, in every campaign, one has to deal on an integrated basis of what's the best idea and what's the best way to communicate that idea to drive, you know, awareness, but most importantly, to induce trial and to gain share. So things like viral marketing, things like experiential, things like public relations, things like social media, things like analytics and consumer insights, all of those things in tandem in addition to traditional media.
I wanted to talk to you about acquisition, too, because I know you're a big fan of acquisition. What are the 3 attributes that you look for in a company when you're considering whether to invest?
Well, I guess the first thing we do is we look at the work. Because at the end of the day, the durable competitive advantage or a sustainable point of differentiation is about the talent of the people and their ability to do work that really cuts through the clutter and actually resonates. And how institutionalized is that talent pool that actually does that work? Is it 4 brilliant people who, if they left the agency or the firm or the whatever, will lose its DNA and what made it successful? Number 2 is culture. What's the culture of the organization like? Is it a good fit for us? You know, do they meet our 6 or 7 or 8, depending on the day, rules of partnership? And are they really receptive to our involvement, and are they an organization where we think we can help them get to different levels of success, higher levels of success faster with us as their partner than they would on their own? And do they believe that? Because just because we believe it doesn't matter. If they don't believe it, then we won't have a successful relationship. And the last thing, obviously, is about economics. Do they understand the balance between art and commerce? Because actually, ultimately, we run a business. we don't think that economics are the number one, but we think it's very important because ultimately, without successful economics, you can't reward the people who produce the work, you can't invest in new technology, you can't do things like allow people 20% of their time to be able to do other things and, you know, reinvent the business, et cetera. You need financial success. So those are probably the three. And television, where do you see the future of television in terms of advertising? There are some who say, you know, it's not the future. It's not true. TV, you know, the 30-second TV spot is not dead. TV will always be very, very important in communicating a story. You know, we've always said, look, the most important thing is how do you get a story told in a way that resonates with consumers emotionally? And, you know, the reality is there's no other way to be able to, you know, tell a story better than on, you know, with television. Now, with mobile application, you're going to see a lot more. You're going to see Google TV, and you're going to see Twitter TV, and you're going to see other means of being able to see programming. There was an interesting fact that I read from the CMA. They said that YouTube broadcasts more content in 60 days than the 3 networks have done in the last 60 years. So there will be more different medium to communicate that advertising message, but still, television itself, you know, big, popular, you know, TV audiences are still the broadest way to meet, to get to mass media. It's not what it used to be 50 years ago, and it'll decline as a percentage of overall ad spending, but it will always be an important part. But it's not going like this, no. You don't think? You think it will level off? No, it won't level off because I think, here's another statistic for you. Consumers spend 26% of their time consuming media online, but only 13% of all advertising dollars are spent online. If advertising spending meets eyeballs, so that 13% goes to 26%, you'll have a $50 billion increase in ad spending on online. Our belief in our own business is we think that that online, digital, social media, technology, and analytics will represent 75% of our business in the next 5 years. Mm-hmm. So if you were to ask me, where do I think, you know, online advertising is going, I think it'll be 50% of the world in the next 10, 15 years. Interesting. And you know, a lot of traditional media, of course, is struggling, like newspapers online, because they haven't figured out a way to make money, and a lot of them are now trying to find ways to get subscriptions, basically, people to pay to read their material. Do you think that's inevitable? I mean, that we can't expect to get our, especially news or any kind of investigative journalism for free? Look, I think that the guy who's got it best, I didn't say he's got it right yet, because only in hindsight will you know, is Rupert Murdoch. Yeah. So, you know, he's taken the integrated view that says, I'm going to have newspapers, I'm going to have television, I'm going to have satellite, I'm going to have, you know, movie content, and he's trying to bring content and production, content and distribution together. I think Comcast is another one. Mm-hmm. The biggest challenge that newspapers have had is the fact that there's such huge physical infrastructure and such huge fixed costs that it's hard to amortize them unless it's part of an integrated media where you have television and radio and newspaper all together. I mean, the reality, though, is the writing was on the wall for newspapers for a long time, but nobody believed it would happen. It was sort of like check consumption. Everybody said, oh, no, everybody's been talking about the death of checks, the death of checks, the death of checks. Well, it started to decline precipitously, and the problem is you can never catch a falling knife. So as revenue declined precipitously, and you have big fixed costs, you can never cut your way to success. So the problem is there hasn't been another revenue stream that's enabled people to be able to make up for that, and that's why you had Tribune go bankrupt. That's why you had, Hollinger go bankrupt. That's why you've had so many of these great newspaper organizations, with great difficulty, because, the fixed cost infrastructure is such that it's very hard to make it work. Do I think newspapers will become a growth engine? I wouldn't be long that idea. Not that I love reading my newspaper. I read it online when I have to. I still love the physical newspaper, but I'm probably a dinosaur. I do have my iPad. I do enjoy reading it, but it's not the same for me in terms of that flexibility. But the issue is that ad revenues have declined so dramatically, and I don't see them coming back so rapidly. And the things like classifieds and real estate and other things that have been the engines, and automotive have been the huge engines, even financial service being engines of growth of newspapers, are not coming back, and because they have other means of being able to communicate with that audience. So I think it is a challenge.
What do you think it has meant to you to be Canadian in the world that you inhabit with, American, British, French-based communication companies, I'm sure other countries as well? Does anything about where you come from set you apart, or are we simply, this is a global industry and it doesn't matter where you're from?
Well, I actually, it's funny because I didn't think about it for a long period of time, but I started to think about it a lot lately. When I used to travel around the world, people would say, well, you're from Canada. I said, oh yeah, that's that little place where people live in igloos, and you came up to St. Lawrence and you came over here and you have a dollarette. You don't really have a dollar. And now all of a sudden it's like people say, wow, you're from Canada. It's so beautiful there. It's the greatest country. Your financial system is the strongest in the world. The quality of living here is so terrific. You've got a resource-based economy. Your dollar has been so strong. People are so friendly and nice, etc. So I think in that regard, it's reinforced my pride of being Canadian. I think there's a lot of things about Canada that actually has given us a real advantage. First of all, as everybody in this audience knows, we don't get the budgets that everybody else gets. So as a result of that, we need to be more innovative. We need to be more creative. We need to have ideas that are going to work with much less budget. I think the level of creativity, innovation, and technological know-how here is as good as any place in the world. I guess if there's one thing that frustrates me is I don't think we as Canadians believe that we are as good as anybody else in the world. But we are, and on many levels. And what we as an organization have seen as we've traveled around the world, and we have been very privileged to associate ourselves with great thought leaders around the world, is that the work being done now from our Canadian partners is as good as anybody's, and that's why they're now doing work around the world. And when I took a look, and Toronto Life magazine had the top 12 app developers, they were doing work around the world. They were as good as anybody else around. So I think there is an element of resourcefulness, of resilience, and of innovation that exists in this country that's as good as Brazil, that's as good as America, as good as anywhere else. One of the things that frustrates me, though, is I love being Canadian, but I don't think about it in business terms. I don't think Wayne Gretzky went around and said, hey guys, from Brantford, just like you to know, we're top scorer from Brantford. Sidney Crosby won the Canada Cup, from Lethbridge. I don't think people think like that. I certainly don't think like that. I think we're going to be the most important company ever in the history of the advertising business, and we're going to compete on a global basis. I don't think Jim Bowsley and Mike Lazaridis are traveling around the world going, buy my phone from Waterloo, Waterloo. It's like digital innovation. I don't think people think about digital anymore. It is our world. So I think in that regard, we just need to think of ourselves as a great country with great people, with great ability, with great ambitions, and dare to dream. And there are so many great success stories that have come out of this country, and more that are coming. But I think the people that do succeed think that they are deserving to be on a world stage anywhere in the world, and that they can do at a world-class level or better, whatever they're doing. And, because for us, every one of our competitors, our big competitors, I'm not worried about people that are below us, but the people that are above us are between 6 and 20 times bigger than us. Okay, so we need to be more innovative. We need to believe that we can accomplish anything. And when you do, it actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're a great overnight success story. It took 25 years to build it, and the last 5 years to get some recognition. But that was a joke, by the way, joke. But seriously, like it takes time. I mean, these things aren't built over over short periods of time. They're built over long periods of time. And we're seeing probably better work, technology, creativity, and innovation coming out of our Canadian partners and in the industry than we've ever seen in our lives.
I know we're going to take some questions from the audience. And Miles, I wanted to ask you, though, something about, I know is very close to your heart, and that's giving back. When did it occur to you that life was sort of in business was about more than just, making money, acquiring staff, adding companies, that philanthropy is also important, both personally and professionally?
Well, I guess I'm 52 years old, so I guess when I was around, well, first of all, I was the beneficiary of people's generosity and mentorship. So, I used to be called the human question machine. So I would go over to my friends' houses and would end up in dialogue and conversation with their parents, and people would say, "Does this kid ever shut up? Like, he just keeps sucking the craniums out of all of us." And so I realized early on in my life that there were a lot of people who gave me a lot of their knowledge and experience and expertise and know-how. I actually got involved in charitable organizations as a means of meeting interesting people doing interesting things, and I felt, because I guess the first thing that ever happened to me that was meaningful was I got subsidized to go to summer camp about 45 years ago at the age of 8. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. I got a chance to go to summer camp. I never would have gone to summer camp. And if I was ever in a position to do something, I would give back and do that. And so when my sister-in-law at the time told me about this project at the Bloor JCC, I thought, hey, this would be really cool. I'd like to, give back and make this thing happen. I just found I had a bunch of people in my life that explained to me, there was a great quote that Seymour Schulich gave me that you probably have heard me use before. It's 100 years from now, nobody will ever remember the car you drove, the house you lived in, or for that matter, how much money you had in your bank account, but the world may be a different place if you made a difference in the life of a young person. So my wife, who's in the audience, who's very involved in charitable activity around the world in very interesting ways, we have 4 daughters, and all of them, I mean, for us, it was a way of saying, look, how do we, I have this expression, it's advantageous to being disadvantaged, and it's disadvantageous to being advantaged. So one of the ways that we talked about how do we make our children have a good sense of values is get them involved in charitable giving and making sacrifices to the benefit of people who are less fortunate. So that was one thing. I just found it fun. Like, it was really cool. Like, it was so emotionally rewarding to be able to do things that were making a difference. And I don't have the ability to say no, because I think that every single cause is amazing.
Do you think we do enough of this in this country?
No. I'll get to that in one second. I don't mean to cut you off. I apologize.
No. I'm just
As you can tell, when I'm on a roll, I like to talk. But there's a really important thing, and it sort of hit me in the last couple of years. So you can give time, talent, or treasure. All of them are important. Whatever you do is important. Mentoring other kids, other young people, people in need is terrific, and everybody here could be a mentor. You don't have to be someone who is high profile to be a mentor. Everybody can be a mentor to you. And that was one message. And the second thing that's happened to me in the last couple of years, which probably had more meaning than sort of putting my name on buildings and doing things that were high profile, involved in big organizations where I didn't have that tangible benefit, but I felt good. I knew I was doing something good, was when I had a chance to meet people where I thought I could make a difference in their lives. Through my experiences, through my network, through my ability to help them employment-wise, through my ability to sort of help them get their education finished. That was the greatest thing to ever happen. And I don't believe that economics are a legacy. I believe making a difference in your own modest way is a great legacy in terms of what makes you feel good. And so for me, it was finding people where I could use, sort of the whole notion of entrepreneurship to sort of help out. So that's why we employ 150 kids a summer now, and that's why we get involved in things like summer camps, and there's all kinds of other things that we do. But people sort of say, well, do you think it's good for business? I don't know if it's good for business. I don't really think about that. I only know this: the more generous I've been, the more successful I've been. So I ain't going to stop. But I think it's about what makes you, there's a great Bill Parcells quote, I hope I get it right. It says, as you travel down the highway of years and take pats on the back as you pass, you'll always fool yourself if you fool the man in the glass. And so, you got to wake up every day and say what's important to you. I think Canadians have historically, you can give money posthumously, anonymously, or actively. I've always believed that you should contribute actively, because it's hard to enjoy the fruits of your labor when you're dead. I didn't say giving money anonymously is not a good thing. It is a good thing, but but I always found the gratification I got by doing things where I could see actively the activities was far more beneficial. And I see, in the case of my wife and my children, their involvement in things, it really changes their perspective. Whether you go to Africa, or you're going to Eastern Europe, or you're going wherever you're going in the world, to volunteer, it changes your life. I got a picture from a young lady today that my family and I met. She had your traditional background in the United States. She was from a very successful family. She went to Georgetown. She studied economics. She worked at Goldman Sachs. She then went to Morgan Stanley, and 2 years into this prime brokerage career, she decided to go to South Africa and volunteer for something called grassroots soccer, which was to educate kids in South Africa all about AIDS. And she sent us a picture today of her playing with lions. It was the most unbelievable thing. And when we met her, she said, it was the greatest experience. It's changed her whole life. And, her parents weren't all that excited about it, because they said, you're in the midst of your career, you're 27 years of age, you're in the ascension stage. How could you just, click off and go do something? But I said to her, you're more employable from my perspective. I would hire you twice as quickly because of your character of deciding to make a difference and going to volunteer and seeing the world and changing things. I just think it makes you a better person. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. That is cool. So I'm sure some of you have questions for Miles. So please, I think there's a microphone here that is available.
I like questions, and I'm fundamentally unoffendable, so you can ask me anything you want.
Do you need some water?
Sure.
Anybody, please.
Rob Dixon, you can start off. He's been with me for 10 years. Don't give me a softball. So Europe has been one of those things that we have looked at for a decade. There's a very vibrant advertising market. It's very different in different parts of Europe. London obviously has been a hotbed of brilliant creative agencies for decades and decades. We have a modest presence in Europe. We're in Sweden, we're in Spain, we're in London. Most of it has been organic, although we did, for Crispin Porter, buy a company called Daddy, which was a digital firm in Sweden that we have been pleased to see as a platform for us. I mean, the problem we have with Europe is a simple one. They're challenged with the level of indebtedness of a lot of the countries. So, the economy's tough. The euro is challenged. I don't think they've got a unified view of how to bail out, the underprivileged countries or the countries that have run into difficulty. And so they have slower growth, they have smaller budgets, and the multiples are way higher. Well, that's kind of incongruent to me. If I wanted slow growth, small budgets, I certainly wouldn't pay a premium for it. And everybody says, well, but if you want to come here, you got to pay a premium. I said, well, no, I don't need to go anywhere if it doesn't make economic sense. So for us, we've sort of been growing organically. I think, we need to expand in partnership with our clients. So we have all of these big Fortune 100 clients who need our assistance, so we will continue to do so. But in terms of a major presence, that we haven't found the right opportunity that made sense to us. I'll tell you the market that excites me right now. I like China, I like India, but I love Brazil. I think Brazil is one of the most exciting markets in the world. Its economy is growing like 16% a year. Like us, it's a natural resource-based economy. I mean, the price of things has gone up. Somebody told me that the price of real estate's grown 100% in the last 2 years. And I'll tell you a fascinating statistic that someone told me that I did not believe, but I did verify. Avon, their business in Brazil is bigger today than in their business in the United States. So in terms of our industry, there's brilliant talent there. The work that comes out of there is exceptional. And it's a very interesting marketplace, both as a domestic marketplace as well as an exportable expertise. So that's an area that we find very exciting. And it also, we like a lot of alpha. We like a lot of change. So when there's rapid change in an environment, in a marketplace, we get excited by that. And obviously Brazil is one of those places. So the more entrepreneurial the marketplace, I think probably the more we think it's a great fit for MDC's culture.
Great.
Gotta have more questions. You look like a really smart guy with a good question.
Okay. There is a microphone here. I don't know if you care to use it, or if you can boom your voice, that would be great.
I don't know. I was just wondering, a lot of times when people talk about Quebec culture, they talk about joie de vivre. And to your point about Brazil, what is the agency culture down there like, and what is the creative culture actually, what kind of creative culture are they fostering down there?
Well, I don't know a lot about it personally. I'm actually planning to spend 10 days later on this year there to get a better understanding. But look, my basic belief is it's very entrepreneurial. It's very let's try things. Because it's been a small country that grew very rapidly and obviously went through its own fair share of adversity just, I don't know, 10 years ago, I think it's a very resilient kind of culture. I think it's an industry that's starting to really feel good about itself in terms of its ability to not only do great work, but now get recognition. I think that it's a young industry. There's a lot of very young firms, a lot of small firms, very few firms that have really gotten scale. It's a different model because it's very media driven. A lot of the revenue is from media activities. But I think it's an industry and it's a country where our industry will go through drastic change. And there's not many of them that are actually doing work outside the country. Obviously, Latin America itself has a big opportunity. Brazil is the most attractive one to us. But I also think that if they're really terrific, that I think it's an exportable expertise because I think they've got a strong, economic base by which to invest abroad. From the limited amount that I know, that's sort of what I would tell you. We are actually doing research as we speak. We've got a couple of people who are Brazilian within our organization, and they're doing a lot of homework for us. But the only way you really get a chance to really understand is to go there. You gotta walk around. You gotta meet firms. You gotta live in the country to really get a fresh feel. But the fact that it's young, emerging, changing very rapidly is one that we find very exciting. It's hard for us to go to a place where people have been there for 30 years. It's more difficult. It's not like we couldn't. I mean, we did it in America, but when we started investing in the U.S., Rob, when did we start? I was going to say 94 or 5, but maybe you're right. Okay, I guess it is. What was Fertitta was the. Yeah, so, I mean, that's 13 years ago. And by the way, just so you understand the art of the possible, we had zero zero of our revenue coming from the US until 13 years ago, 13 years ago. And now it's 85% of our revenue. Now part of it's through, no question, a lot of it's through acquisition, but our organic growth there was still, double, probably over the course of that 13 years, it was probably 20% compounded. But it's a lot easier when you go to emerging markets and you get an industry leader. It's a lot easier in that regard. Muriel, you must have a question for me.
Oh, is there? I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Yes, please.
You've made a lot of recent investment in the PR industry, and I'm curious about your perspective on that from a global point of view.
So we're contrarian. When everybody hates things, we like them. When everybody likes things, we sort of think that our opportunity is different. So two things. First of all, if you noticed in 2008 when the world looked like it was absolutely bleakest, I got excited. I actually thought this was a great opportunity because between 2005 and 2008, we did not do anything other than invest in great talent, so organic growth, and we invested in our two most successful businesses, Crispin, Porter & Bogusky, and Kirschenbaum Bond Senecal & Partners. In 2008, when the world looked bleakest and Warren Buffett said, I'm going to make a 10-year investment in America, I went, I'm not so smart. That guy's the world's smartest guy. If he's going to make a 10-year investment in America, I'm going to make a 10-year investment in America. Second thing is, I've said all along, this actually, although I don't believe I'm capable of an original thought, this was one of my few original thoughts. I said I thought PR was the new thing. I said it 3 years ago. I thought that what happened in advertising was going to happen in PR, that the smartest people in the world were in these smaller, more nimble entrepreneurial firms, and that clients would realize that all that mattered was great ideas that would solve problems and make brands famous, and that the most innovative firms that really were embracing social media were, I thought, the entrepreneurial PR firms in that regard. So I thought there's a great opportunity because there's all these emerging entrepreneurial PR firms that really had all the characteristics of our most exciting advertising firms, agile and ambitious, smart, very focused on only one thing, driving performance for clients that we could invest in. We've expanded our existing businesses with Veritas in Canada, but we expanded Lime Public Relations as part of Kirschenbaum. We acquired a firm called HL Group. We acquired a firm called Allison Partners. We acquired a firm called Quitkin. We acquired a firm called Sloan & Company. I've identified a dozen other amazing firms, and if I could be each one of their partners, I would do it tomorrow morning. So I think you'll see us be much more ambitious. I think that the entrepreneurial independents are going to capture more and more share of market in the PR space, because clients are realizing that the consistent institutionalized mediocrity of the bigger firms is not nearly as compelling as it used to be, and clients want to pay for ideas and results, not for infrastructure and overhead.
I guess thinking of awards as a merchandising strategy, whether it's for an individual creative person or for an agency, right? It seems to me, and that has been a huge appeal about awards, in addition to the gratification that creative people feel, God knows, I love my awards. But I think now, with this notion of creating buzz, really creating this, this groundswell, and therefore that becomes recognition, I think it could be at least as good as getting an award in terms of merchandising it, right? And even gratification. So
yeah, and there are parts, and I agree with you. But there are parts of our industry that there are no awards for. I mean, I don't know about data analytics, data mining, and consumer insight awards. But I got to tell you, in terms of things that are making a difference in our industry and things that are making a difference in our work, that is something that's, really resonates with clients. If you can drive 30% more performance for the same dollar through data mining and data management and data analytics and consumer insights, clients will, beat a path to your door. There's no award for that. People don't even know who's doing it, what they do, and how they do it exactly. It's never gets any profile. But look, you know, this industry, you know, whether it's the Canadian industry or the U.S. industry or anywhere else in the world, it's high-profile creativity is that which gets headlines, okay? And that which gets headlines seems to get awards. Over time, I'm sure it'll change. But you know, it takes somebody innovative to say, okay, well, what are we doing about recognizing these other brilliant campaigns that are about social media, or they're about, you know, a cause, or they're about viral marketing, et cetera, and doing a lot with a little. But that, I think, you know, it needs someone like you to champion that, because, you know, that's how these new things happen.
I think we're getting close to time. There's someone behind. Yeah, you had a question.
Hi, thanks. My name is Julian Brass. Quick congratulations on all your success in the for-profit and not-for-profit, first of all. My question is, if you could go back 32 years at the beginning of your career, what are 2 or 3 things you might change?
I wish I was born wealthy, so I'd like to change that. I'd like to be 6'4". I wish I graduated from Harvard. I didn't graduate at all. Seriously? You know, I think, you know, first of all, it's very important that people understand, this did not go straight up. I've been poor and almost broke a number of times in my life. So I've had 8 hair transplants. There's a reason for it. So I don't want people to go, well, that was kind of boring. This guy talked about, you know, like how the world went straight up for him. Like, it was not like that, okay?
I read something online that, is this right, in 2001 you owed $900 million and had one foot in the grave and another one on a banana skin? Something like that?
Yes, 875 million, and my best friend told me I had one foot in the grave, one foot on a banana peel, and my momentum was going down. That was my best friend. So I think it's important to understand, like, this thing didn't go straight up. I mean, you know, the only attribute I was born with that I thought, look, I think I won the ovarian lottery, because although I was born in a family that had modest means, and we grew up in 900 square feet, 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment, I learned hard work, because both my parents worked 70, 80 hours a week. I learned to be resilient. I learned that failure was not an option, because poverty sucked. And I sort of thought that, you know, I could overcome most adversity. I think if I've learned a couple of things, I learned that my obsessive compulsive advantage, what I call OCA, which is if you channel compulsive energy in a positive direction, you can accomplish amazing things. The problem with that is my entrepreneurial ambitions exceeded my grasp most times. So my ambition, you know, my ambitions exceeded my resources, my financial resources, and so sometimes I'd run into difficulty because, you know, I try and run too fast in relation to the resources I had. I was fortunate that I had the salesmanship and the wherewithal to raise capital so I could sort of fix my problems. You know, so when I look back, I sort of say, well, that was one thing. You know, every time we initiated something bad happened. Like, I started my business in 1980. Interest rates went from 11 to 22%. We went public on Friday, October the 16th of 87 at 2:30, and Friday, October the 19th, sorry, Monday, October the 19th, the TSX was down, or the Dow was down 528 points. We went public on with our marketing services business, Maxcom, in, like, I don't know, March of 2001, and the internet bubble burst like 30 days later. So every time we do something, the world gets bad. So if you see me do something, you might want to just take cover and shelter, because it's probably going down for a while. But you know the expression, if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger. I do actually think that was helpful. Because actually, if you can overcome adversity, you gain a level of confidence. I probably would have gone to, knowing what I know now, I would have gone to the US market earlier, just because the marketplace was so much bigger, and for us to be able to accomplish that. I wouldn't have diversified as much. I got into things like catalog shopping with Rigo Greetings and Gifts. I got into the seed business with Mackenzie Seed. We got into security printing, other than checks, and checks was the greatest thing to ever happen to us. You know, checks was, when everybody said check was a bad business, you know, late Ted Rogers, God bless him. I mean, he sold us a business for $50 million, all of which I borrowed, and we turned that into $750 million. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be where MDC is today. But it's very hard to take, you know, a look back, you know, objectively, because there are things that we did that we needed to do, but they didn't work out so good. But at the time, we needed to do that to get to the next step. I'll give you one last one. The young aspiring business student meets a successful businessman, and he asks him, "How'd you become so successful?" So the old gentleman contemplates for a moment, looks outside, looks around, and says, "Well, I jump at my opportunities." And the young gentleman says, "Well, there's so many opportunities out there. How do you know which ones to jump at?" And the old guy says, "I don't. I just keep jumping." So for 30 years, I've been just jumping.
Miles Nadal, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Just before you both step down, on behalf of the ICA and Advertising Week, I want to thank you both for joining us this morning. Thank you so much. Miles, thank you so much. Pleasure. Donna, thank you so much.
Oh, lovely.
It's just a little memento as usual. Thank you. I hope you can attend some of those events throughout the week, not flying back to Vancouver too early or to a place where the weather is too nice.
No.
Stay with us in the cold.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Paul Robertson as well and the whole team at Shaw. This is great to have them as a big sponsor of Advertising Week. It's always, you know, this is an event that's from the start has wanted to be totally inclusive. And I think because of that, we have participation from all the major players in this country. Shaw's a big player. We're so proud to have them with us for that. But Advertising Week, it's a third year, and it's picked up momentum year after year, and this is fantastic to see. I see the room here is full today. We must have at least 300 people here today. We didn't think because of the cold we would totally fill up, and even where there was no place setting, it is. So it shows that we're picking up steam. We've picked up momentum over the 3 years. We have great speakers throughout the week. So what I would like to do is answer one question. I've got so many emails in the last few days. So Claude, which event should I attend? I'd like to say all of them. But what I would like to say is if you haven't totally decided or looked at the schedule, please, there were take ones, those Z card. I have the whole full schedule for the week. But there's a few things that you might want to consider. Like today, for example, we start our speaker series in the afternoon. And there were questions about social media today. Well, the folks at Yahoo are going to be there talking about that later this afternoon. Tomorrow, Tuesday, we should have another great speaker series with Gene Simmons, a king of branding in a different way, but that should be quite a bit of fun. On Wednesday, we're going to talk about the future of advertising online with Google, and that too should be quite interesting. Then on Thursday, the speaker series will welcome back some of the best creative minds from the MDC group, and we'll have a nice chat with them at the Rome. And we will conclude the speaker series on Friday with the folks from AOL. So throughout the week, we have great speaker series. From all of you who are a member of ICA and ACA, we have a member appreciation breakfast on Thursday morning. I hope you can attend. Bring your staff to that. It's sponsored by Microsoft, and that should be a very interesting morning as well. On Friday morning, we have a presentation in 3D advertising. So people talk social media, they talk traditional, and now suddenly we're into 3D advertising. Well, we have a presentation that was ranked the 3rd or 4th best at Cannes this year, and it's right here on Friday morning. We have the Cannes reel on Friday, and then for those who want to have entertainment or more in the evening, we have the Cassies tonight, so advertising that works. We have the agency wars, so if you're into boxing and hitting each other, I mean, that should be a fun night. And then on Thursday night is the ad ball, which is actually the fun kind of closing evening event for Advertising Week. So plenty to do. Bring out your staff, bring out your client. Actually, if you have some meetings scheduled in the afternoon with clients, cancel those meetings, take the clients with you, and take them to one of our events. You won't regret it, and I think they'll appreciate that. So again, thanks everybody for joining us, and let's all have a great week.